the second one is physician, and the third one is pharma. Interestingly, all the three elements which are there, or for all the people who are listening in and for the physicians also, the physical part of life is very important. A doctor, unless and until he sees a patient, he touches the patient, so far was not able to do anything as far as prescription is concerned. And when it comes to patient, many of the patients have stated that just by looking at the doctor and the doctor touching him or taking his pulse, he starts feeling 50% better and his problems are over. Now that has undergone a dramatic change. We are continuing to be in the similar type of situation. These relationships are going to change. Not only relationships, the expectations are also going to change dramatically. It is not going to be easy for anybody to predict what is going to change, how much it is going to change, and what will be the exact future. But I think there is no other better panel who is there to explain us as to what is going to change in the relationship between the patient, the physician, and the pharma world in the coming time. So let me take the opportunity of introducing the panel to all of you. I have the great pleasure of introducing Dr. Jagdish Hiramat. All the panelists are so well known to the participants that actually nobody requires an introduction. But I must complete this formality. Dr. J.S. Hiramat is a director for Cath Lab in Ruby Hall Clinic. He is a chair professor for preventive cardiology. He is also a teacher for DNB and DM cardiology. He is an investigator for several international research trials. He is a prolific speaker. He has attended and he has given more than 300 talks are there to his credit. So Dr. Hiramat, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Moving on, it's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Unni Krishnan. Dr. Unni Krishnan is an endocrinologist and is the CEO of Chelaram Diabetes Institute, which is at Pune. It's a leading diabetes institute which is focused on a lot of research. Dr. Unni Krishnan is in charge of various things. He heads clinical care, research, education. He also oversees a philanthropic rural diabetes care program for the institute. There are several publications to his credit. He has more than 160 publications. He has also been a former editor-in-chief and a founder editor for a journal of thyroid research and practice. There are several awards which he has received. The recent one is in 2017, he received a fellowship award from RSSDI. In 2019 also, every year I think he receives a lot of awards. Recently he has received a Diabetes Excellence Award at Digital Diabetes Summit at Hyderabad. Dr. Unni Krishnan, it's a great honor for us to have you with us. My pleasure to
Thank you.
My pleasure to welcome Mr. Sudarshan Jain. Again, doesn't require an introduction. He's a Secretary General for Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. He, in his earlier role, was the Managing Director for Abbott Healthcare. Mr. Jain has seen pharmaceutical industry in all its hues. He has been associated with the industry for the last 35 years. He has a strong passion for healthcare education. He has worked in companies like Abbott, Johnson & Johnson, and leading Indian companies. He has got extensive experience in almost every department and every segment of pharmaceutical. He has also been a vice president for OPPI. His passion is education. So he's associated, he's a guide, he's a mentor for several institutes, including top institutes like IIM Ahmedabad. Mr. Sudarshan Jain is an alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad also. Mr. Jain, welcome to this webinar. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. Moving on to Dr. Sanjay Mitra, again, doesn't require an introduction. Everybody who's listening in knows Dr. Sanjay Mitra. He's the Managing Director for SMSRC Private Limited. Sanjay Mitra has been associated with the industry again for almost last 3 decades. He specialized in something which is called as application of prescription research in strategic pharmaceutical marketing. He founded and is the managing director for SMSRC Private Limited. This organization, SMSRC, is a young organization. It started about 10 years back. It is already having a leadership status in the strategic prescription research arena in both India as well as in Bangladesh. Sanjay has been associated with the industry for the past 3 decades, has contributed significantly to the success of many brands as well as organizations with his strategic insights. Under his leadership, SMSRC provides not just innovative prescription research data and analytics, but they also undertake a lot of strategy workshop, go-to-market projects, and most of the leading pharmaceutical companies in India and Bangladesh have benefited significantly because of Sanjay's insights. There are many companies. In fact, actually, if you look at the companies who are his clients and customers who have benefited significantly, they literally go from A to Z, right from Alchem, Indian companies, multinational companies, to almost Zydus. Every company he has been working with in the past. Sanjay also is very passionate as far as knowledge industry is concerned. He has been associated with many industries. He's a speaker at many places. He goes to many institutes. And Sanjay, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Welcome to this webinar.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me introduce the company which me and my co-host Srihari are representing. We represent a company called as NextPlan Consulting. This is a young consulting organization. We started 2 years back. Our focus is brand and business growth solutions. We work on capabilities, we work on hand-holding, and we are also in advising. We proudly say that we are a group of 8 people, and collectively, we have got experience of over 200 years. If you look at the last paragraph, we have got a large bandwidth, but we are focusing basically on building sales management and marketing management. We are also experts in conventional ways of promoting the products and leveraging the relationship, as well as the newer modules, which may be very effective as far as the current situation is concerned. We have been associated with many companies, and the names are there, as you can see on the slide. Having said that, so once again, welcome to all of you and all the participants. I will start off with the first question. Let me tell the format of this. The format is going to be in 2 rounds. Each of the panelists will be responding to a question, 1 question in each round. Our timing is up to 8:30, and in the last 15 minutes, we'll be addressing the questions. My co-host Srihari will help us as a director for this webinar, so he will help us in various things. So Dr. Hiremat, my first question to you. It's a lot which has changed in the last 3 months, right? You deal not only with in-clinic patients, but a lot of patients who come into the hospitals. Your hospital is one of the leading hospitals in the country. The challenges which the patient are going to feel and the doctors are going to undertake are going to be of a very dramatic nature and different nature when it comes to a hospital. So what are your views and what are your insights as far as the short-term and long-term impact of COVID on patient and physician's relationship?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure amongst the stalwarts of the pharma industry. It's a grim situation for not only for us, for the whole world. And we seem to be somehow coping better with many other countries. But next few months are going to be a trying time. Short term, when I look at short term patient-physician relationship, especially in the hospital settings, I'm focusing for the next 6 months. That means hopefully we'll be just getting over the COVID, or we don't know. We expect that by that time things will settle down. So I expect that number of visits to the hospital are going to go less as in the next 6 months. Because of the hospital environment people are scared of catching the infection. Also because a lot of traveling is going to cut down. So a lot of people who come from smaller areas to bigger hospitals is going to go down. Most of the hospitals will use the no-touch technique. You mentioned in your introduction that touching the patient has its own glory. But I feel that has to go down. Even from the patient's point of view, there will be acceptance if the maybe a senior doctor doesn't actually physically touch them, goes through the reports and decides on a strategy, forms a prescription that should be okay, and the other staff would be doing the weights and blood pressures. And this practice has always been around for last some years, but it's going to get official and people are going to accept this kind of a no-touch examination. In the waiting rooms, we have to avoid crowds, so they'll be all walk-in patients are going to get less. It will be all formalized by appointment patients coming in. And those who come without that probably would get all directed to the casualties or emergencies. Um, the the situation, especially in cardiology or somebody, is there is some ECG done in the hospital. Quickly, somebody runs up to you and shows the ECG. I'm sure there'll be a lot of image transfers now, whether it is X-rays, MRIs, or ultrasounds. They're all going to be flashed onto your mobile phone or your laptop inside hospital also. Stethoscope, unfortunately, is already waning in its importance. I think it will die a natural death because it will be probably relegated only to major blood pressure. And even nowadays, with the electronic, natural, automatic type of BP apparatuses, even that is not required. So, stethoscope, I think, will go out of doctor's cabin. The way cardiopulmonary resuscitation takes place is going to change. It's going to be guarded. It is going to safeguard the interests of the people who do that first, and then the second priority could be the patient. Whether it is a good strategy or not can be debated, but this is how it will happen. Um, I'm sure most consultants will have, suppose I practice say 9 to 6 in my hospital. So I leave at least 1.5 hours daily for appointments on telemedicine. So there will be a fixed appointment schedule for consultation. And we have a cell where I can enter and be with the patient and go through his report and do these consultations electronically, especially for elderly, those who cannot travel and those who are from outside. And of course, it will be for follow-up patients who don't need so much detention of physical examination. All procedures that we do require a COVID clearance because it is at least nowadays we have to change. Cost of treatment is going to go up because most of the hospitals are going to require to build all these things, the sanitization, the sterilization, the extra equipment, the extra care, the extra staff. So the hospital charges, I'm sure, are going to go up also to make up for the lot of financial loss they are going through. And that would mean that the lower middle class category who would otherwise come to a corporate hospital probably will gravitate to government hospitals. So you would see only the upper middle class or insurance patients coming to institutions. Um, the days of small nursing homes are going to be tough because it would mean a lot of equipment, lot of formalization. It actually amounts to how unorganized sector and organized sector, the whole change is going to be towards the organized sector, and the unorganized sector is going to suffer even in medicine. Um, the plastic surgeries, the important cosmetic surgeries, the IVFs and the sterilization and that kind of treatments will take a backseat. And very sick elderly, it's a very sad statement to make, but very sick elderly patients will be relegated to home care rather than bringing them into the hospital. I'm the last part of the short-term thing. That what I could think was the government regulations coming on the way the private hospitals are charging. See, they did it for the stent charges. Overnight, the stent charges were capped. And so it is happening to medical equipment, other medical gadgets. So this might happen to the private institute, maybe for a period of 1 year or so. Government might cap the way private hospitals are charging. So I don't know what's going to be the impact of that. In the long term, maybe these things settle down and people get used to these situations. Probably, maybe COVID is maybe a thing of past, or we learn to love with it, live with it. So there will be some rollback from this tight situation, going back to the original, but it will never be the same again. It will be a lot of electronically driven, lot of telemedicine. Uh, Again, the days of small nursing homes will be tough. Uh, as I said, unorganized sector is going to suffer. And the pros and cons of that are different. Like a person who's staying in a small colony and has a nursing home nearby, suppose he get gastro, goes to a kind of a hydration therapy for a nearby hospital, that thing is going to be difficult. Overall, I feel in the short term and the long term, the medicine is going to be more formal, more investigative, more impersonal, more expensive. It will be meant for people who have insurance and can afford such treatment. It will be more westernized, Americanized, and the human touch of Indianness of the medical practice is going to go down in the years to come, days to come. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Hiramat. I think that was very insightful. I think what I heard, some of the important things is that one is stethoscope for, I mean, it's a symbol of doctor basically. And that is going to probably wane away, go away. Technology, as I listen to you, is going to be at the center point in short term as well as long term. Also, as I hear you, the speed at which you can see the patients is going to go down. So the number of patients who will be treated or who will be handled by a hospital is going to go down. As a result of that, the cost is going to increase. And thus, it is obvious that one can expect that a governmental intervention is going to take place. So a lot of dramatic changes. Thank you, Dr. Hiraman. That was very, very interesting insight. Moving on to my next question, and this is addressed at Dr. Unnikrishnan. As I told all of you that Dr. Unnikrishnan is an endocrinologist. Sir, Dr. Hiramat spoke about a situation which is there typically for a hospital. And I would like you to speak about a similar type of thing, that is the relationship between the physician and the patient in the context of an in-clinic, for a consulting physician, for a diabetologist, where it is compulsory for him to see the patients today. And number of patients are very high. What do you think will happen to this relationship in the short term and the long term?
I think, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here and to meet all of you, and Mr. Jain, especially whom I have highest regard for. Consider him to be a visionary, and seeing him after so many years was a pleasure. And I think the doctor-patient relationship is going to stand the test of time. The reason is because technology is only a tool. The technology is a tool which is capable of connecting the doctor to the patient. So that's just the interface. The interface doesn't matter. I think qualities like concern, empathy, which tie the patient to the doctor, would still stand the test of time, because I think it is possible to transcend these technologies and connect to the patient. Just to give an example, in a teleconsultation, you might not be able to check the pulse or the blood pressure in a way that you usually do, but your sixth sense to pick up different signs will go up. For example, you're carefully eliciting new symptoms and signs of disease. You're looking at how fast the patient is breathing. Is the patient sick? Is the patient looking pale? How are the patient's eyes? And also, a few simple tips which you pick up during teleconsultation is asking the patient how they are, how their family is. I think that can bring back the connection, because after all, it's only a tool, and it's the interface, and it's the human interface will always shine through. The second thing about hospitals and smaller hospitals, well, what we've done in our hospital is that the first 1 or 2 months, initially after the lockdown, as I was being in charge of the hospital, I focused on training our staff I changed the goalpost a little bit to focus on safety, training, and PPE. And now that the lockdown has been released, we've begun our operation, and our staff is ready to actually put those steps inside. So we are open, we are operational. As I do my video consultations maybe 4 or 5 in the afternoon. But with all the PPs, I think it is possible. We've changed the orientation of the consultation chamber a little. Earlier, we had the patient sitting right next to us, like it's in the US hospitals, like in the Mayo Clinic. We designed uh, our sofa to be just next to the physician's chamber. Now we've changed it. I've changed it a little bit in my room to increase the social distancing, and we've tried to make small innovations while seeing patients. For example, uh, uh, where to put the shield and at which point the patient should undergo screening. So I think overall it's challenging times, but the pandemic isn't going to go away soon, and we've tried to innovate, and I'm sure the pharma industry will also. They are very good at innovation, and they will also lead the way towards better patient care.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Dr. Unnikrishnan. I think what I hear when you said is that while technology would be there, the bedside manner will continue to be a very important thing. Only thing, the methodology of doing that patient comfort is going to change. So it's important for the physician to still continue to focus on giving the comfort. Maybe it is through telecommunication. Look at the signs which are beyond what the patient is telling. And as a result of that, you will continue to play the same role as with what we had earlier. But as Dr. Hiremat also said, that the touching may go away, but the touch may not go away. I think the second important point which you brought in is that
it should not go away. I mean, may not go away, it should not go away.
It should not go, absolutely. And then the second important point which you brought in, and I think that is a very good insight, is that the staff training. The staff training becomes a very critical area for all the small nursing homes, big hospitals, etc. In the short term as well as in long term, because that is going to have a dramatic change. And the third important thing which I heard from Dr. Unnikrishnan is that there is going to be a structural change when it comes to consultation. There could be the way in which the patient is handled. There could be a layer before he meets the final doctor. There could be the structural change of how the patient sits, how he interacts with the customer. So I think there are a lot of changes which are already happening and which are likely to stay for a long time. Thank you, Dr. Unnikrishnan. That was very insightful. Moving on to Mr. Sudarshan Jain. Jain Sahab, you have been in the industry, you've seen the industry in almost every hue and color. This has been something which has been unforeseen. And you also currently hold a position which has got a lot of influence on what pharma industry is doing today to support the country. What would you like, would you like to tell all the participants as to what pharma industry and what companies have done to handle this COVID crisis as of now? Jain Sahab, your audio is muted.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thank you very much, Abhay, and thanks to be invited by NextPlan and also be part of a very distinguished panel. Dr. Hiremat, Dr. Unnikrishnan, very old relationship, and Sanjay, outstanding relationship over the years. I learn every time when I hear presentation of Sanjay and Abhay and Shihari, outstanding relationship. And all the participants, many of them, I've been part of them and got associated with them. At the very outset, I would like to salute the medical profession, all paramedical people, are persons in the manufacturing organization who are producing the goods, transporters, and our medical people who have started working, or field people who have started working in the field for last 2 weeks. Because this is the only part in the world, I will say, that India has gained reputation in last 2 months as the real pharmacy of the world. And compared to any other part of the world, we have managed COVID situation well in terms of pharma industry. There is no shortage of any medicine which is reported in India. And we have been able to meet the obligations of India to the world. In fact, just for the knowledge of everyone, 20% of the medicine in the world are produced from India. Every third tablet in US is supplied from India. Every fourth tablet in UK is supplied from India. So what we have done during this time is commendable. manufacturing organization, transportation, distribution channels, doctors. What we have done is just phenomenal. And what we have done, I will talk of some of the lessons. When we started 2 months back, we were not sure how do we run our factories with concept of social distancing. Dr. Hiramat and Dr. Unikrishnan talked. But when we look at the factories today, we have created social distancing. Each department is different. The canteen time is different. And we are running our factories today at 80% of the capacity. We have come a long way. If I look at last 2 weeks, our field people were not able to meet you, doctors, and they've started meeting. They have not started meeting you in full swing, but they've started working the market. And we will see transformations also of the clinic where the norms of social distancing are maintained, where it is maintained that yes, touch with the stethoscope is not there, but touch is fundamental. Because I will say that the relationship of doctors and patient is so important, and that touch and trust is fundamental. So we have been trying to look at whether that touch will go away over a period of time. So what we have been doing, we have done the study with BCG and Bain, and we have seen that in China, which got impacted earlier, today 80% of the patients are returning back to the doctor's clinic with all the precautions which are being undertaken. Because yes, telemedicine will come in the way, but the starting point of meeting the doctor face to face, that eye connection, that eye contact, taking the patient history and doctor prescribing and that diagnosis, yes, there will be a lot of diagnostic which will come into the picture, as Dr. Hiramat was talking and Dr. Unikrishnan have been talking. So the way we look at it going forward, yes, there will be diagnostic which will be coming in, but at the end of the day, that touch, that confidence, that doctor seeing the patient, according to me, that should come back. And what we need to do as the whole medical community, as the whole pharma community, we need to work together to get the doctors, to get the patients to the doctor's clinic, create that confidence that the environment in the doctor's clinic is safe and they can rely on that doctor to see the patient. So first fundamental duty I'm seeing at this particular moment is getting the doctors to the practice in the private clinics, which has started at many of the places, 50-60%. And second, patients coming to the doctor, because that's the place which is fundamental, and that will help to offer the best kind of treatment to patients. We will talk further on it, because in chronic diseases, unless the patient is seen by the doctor and unless that confidence is given, we will lead to much more complication than COVID, because the complications of not seeing the chronic patient will be much more in times to come. And with WHO, we raised that point last week when we were talking about it, that chronic cases have to be seen by the doctor. Yes, telemedicine is important, follow-up can be done there, but initial seeing is very, very important. I will stop here, Abhay, and we'll come back to this. Yeah, thank you so much, Abhay.
Thank you, Mr. Jain. It was very, very interesting. I think what I heard is, one is we have lived up to our image of being pharmacy of the world. We are a very important part of the world canvas when it comes to supply of medicine. And then, despite COVID, despite so many 69 days of lockdown, it is commendable that most of the factories are at 80% of its production capabilities. And you are right, as a common man also keeps on saying that medicines are available. You may not have vegetables, but medicines are available today. What a very important thing which I heard Mr. Jain saying is that one of the important role which physicians and maybe pharma and the media has to play is to ensure that how do you get the patient back to the doctor. And that's a very important challenge which we are facing today, because the complications of not visiting a physician are far higher as compared to the complications of COVID. So I think that's one of the call out for the pharma world. That is one of the call out for physicians. That's one of the call out for probably media to impart that confidence that yes, it can be done. And I think physicians will have to undertake changes and structurally and otherwise to ensure that a patient feels safe while he's coming to the doctor. Thank you very much, Jain sir. Moving on to Sanjay, Dr. Sanjay Mitra. Sanjay, you have been very busy when the lockdown is on, and I know that you have conducted a phenomenal research which was involving huge number of doctors, which tells the industry and the doctors as to what is currently happening as an impact of COVID. So some of us have heard about it, but all of us are very keen to understand what has been the impact so far of COVID. And this again is in the patient and physician's relationship arena.
Yeah, thanks, Abhay and Sherry, for giving me this opportunity to represent this panel. Great distinguished panel members are there. So without taking much time, as you all know, I would always love to share some information, facts. So last 3 phases of lockdown 1, 2, and 3, we have been trying to find out across the country in almost 86 locations and more than 6,000 doctors who are on our panel. We have a panel of 10,000 doctors right now. So out of that, we could connect up with 6,000 doctors across the country, both urban as well as rural. And the findings are here in front of us. So let me just share the screen quickly. And, looking at these findings, I would tend to believe that COVID is more of an urban problem. Probably because of its testing nature, because tests are conducted more in urban than in rural. That could be one reason. And also the traveling population mostly are in urban. So that could be another reason. I don't know the real scientific reasons for this, but what we could see in urban India, approximately 21% generalists, which are mainly GPs and CPs, have kept their clinics operational, whereas 74% of the generalists in rural India have kept their clinic operational. So rural India, only 25% of the clinics were shut on an average out of these 86 locations that we have covered in India. Whereas in urban, it's reverse. 80% of the clinics were non-operational. In both urban and rural India, among generalist and consultant physicians have the highest percentage of operational clinics. Whereas dentist or ophthalmologist like that, they were at the least. I mean, dentists were only 6%. So what I would tend to believe that wherever there are more procedures required, or dermatologists even, where there is more procedural requirement in the clinic, there the operations were less. Whereas in the generalist level, procedures were relatively less. Therefore, the clinics were operational, relatively more operational. And also another interesting fact, when I look at urban doctors segments by segments, diabetologists and psychiatrists, gynecologists, these were the top 3 segments where the clinics were relatively more operational, at least 25 to 24%, not hugely operational. But out of different segments, these were some of the doctor segments where clinics, at least they were entertaining some patients by appointment. Even in Mumbai city, when I have conducted personal interviews with some of the leading diabetologists, I could see, or cardiologists even, I could see they were treating, repeat cases or some emergency cases in their clinic by appointment. Though for the patient, moving to the doctor's clinic was very difficult, but in a few cases, I have personally found out that was happening in Mumbai or in Calcutta. Now, these findings, when I look at the regional level in the next slide, percentage of generalists who have opened their clinics is highest in urban east and urban south. Among the lowest, that's the higher number. As you could see here, generalists in urban and generalists in east and south were relatively more, whereas in north and west, it was relatively less. Reasons, probably north and west had more impact of COVID in urban locations than at least during the initial phases than south and east. Again, could be because of the tests rather than the actual reality, but that has some impact on the generalist doctors' clinic operations in these 2 regions. So there was some difference. Among the specialists who have opened their clinics is the highest in urban south and urban east. Not significantly high, but marginally high. But the most interesting thing is when we look at rural India, east was least disturbed. I mean, in east, rural India doctors were having their clinics operational almost close to 90%, whereas next was south and relatively less in west and north. So overall, we saw that rural India impact was relatively less, but within that, east and south was even lower. So what do we get out of this? One could be the awareness level of the threats were less in the rural than in urban. The other was, of course, the tests that were carried out in urban, in north and west was much more than compared to east in particular and also in south. So COVID was more confined within the urban and not so much in rural India. Given this as a fact, if I have to really predict the future, we have already started initiating with an American university. We are trying to do a second phase of research amongst the same doctors, as we always believe it is best to, go back to the same set of sample and see the trend changes in the trend. So we have almost started that research where we would like to see the impact of post-COVID expectations and impact during the COVID, whoever has practiced, how they have practiced. Dr. Unnikrishnan made a very relevant point. Even Sudarshan made that point quite emphatically, and I would tend to agree fully with that. Day before yesterday, in one of our local newspaper, there was a topic called on clinical eye of the doctors. Now, it is all about the clinical touch. Even if I don't touch physically, when I see eye to eye, that gives a different healing, or that gives a different cure, or that gives a different message to the patients at large. So always, my wife being a pediatrician, I have always kept on hearing that the patient's mother or parents would always ask her appointment to see the patient at her clinic. Even the hospital OPD patients will say that, Madam, can I visit your clinic and can I get some more time from you? So this exclusive sitting with the doctor and the patient makes a lot of significance while offering the treatment beyond the pills, beyond the drugs that we prescribe. And that's, I believe that's very important. And I'm sure about that this will definitely come back. Already when I look at the recent trends in West Bengal and particularly in Calcutta, post Amphan, almost this cyclone which has devastated the city, almost most of the population have forgotten COVID and they are more busy with the new reality or new challenges. So human mind is always adaptive to different changes. So the moment a crisis comes and there is another crisis, the previous crisis goes away. And that's what we see even in the news channel. If you see the national news channels for last 2 months, and if you see the last 15 days local news channel in Calcutta, there was hardly any reference of COVID. There was only a repeated reference on Amphan. So taking a clue from this, maybe June, July, of course, we have to be careful because it's still spreading despite having so many days of lockdown. But definitely and surely, things will move towards normalcy until and unless there is a sudden repeat peak and more severe peak. Keeping fingers crossed, if that doesn't happen, probably around September or so, we will see a much better normal life that it used to be. Given the fact that yes, there will be some restrictions in every operations, not only in field of medical science, but also in all other sectors, including any general office areas or any government offices or banks or any other institution. So that's what I feel looking at the numbers, and I would further submit that habits doesn't change all of a sudden. It's more with the influence of some external forces the habits changes. We have been trying to being in prescription research for last 3 decades. We spent a lot of time and energy and money to develop our own online software patient management tool 3 years back. We went to so many doctors who are on our panel and whom we were meeting for so many years. We received only 10% acceptance. During COVID, lockdown phase 1, 2, and 3, theory is aware about this. The interest level went up as high as 65%. So this external threat made the doctors change their habits from handwritten prescription to online patient management. And all kinds of mushrooming of tools were available. So we were mixing up between telemedicine to patient management software, WhatsApp call as an online tool to phone call and all that. Finally, again, I would tend to agree with Sudarshan what he said. It's a tool which will facilitate doctors for their clinic practice. There was a time when doctors used to operate with only knife and at times without any instrument and gadgets. Now, I don't know, but doctors are there. How many different gadgets we are using, but still the human touch is essential. And I'm sure that is going to continue. So as we move towards normalcy, there will be these online tools, but they will only play as a facilitating tool and a role for doctors to take care of the patient better. They can't take the front seat, and I don't think there will be a time when everything will be managed through online. It is almost impossible. And if that is so, then the way things are happening or used to happen before COVID, we will move towards that direction. I'm quite optimistic as far as this particular point is concerned. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. Very interesting. I think it's based on hard facts, 6,000 doctors. And then what you heard is right. I think rural has remained unaffected. 80% of the people have practiced. Urban, it is exactly the reverse. 20% of the doctors have practiced, right? And then you have seen the sequence of the whole thing, which is there. East is unaffected. Next is South, followed by West, and followed by North, right? One interesting thing is that Sanjay's predictions in the past have always come true, majority of them. Now he's predicting by September things will be normal. So Sanjay, may God be with you. And I hope that the things will come back to normalcy by that time. Thank you very much. That was very interesting, Sanjay. Okay, so that covers our first round, which was basically it was covering the relationship between patients and physicians. And we have seen that technology will come into play, but then the touching may not be there, but touch is going to be there. So we'll have to find out, the physicians will find out various methodology of ensuring that the bedside manners are communicated either directly or through the telemedicine communication which we have. I'm moving on to the second round now. This round primarily will deal with the relationship between the physicians and pharma. So I'm back with Dr. Hiremat. Sir, medical updation is an essential part of the doctor's life. And so far, medical updation has been, majority of it, has been again physical in nature, whether it is webinars, whether it is symposia, whether it is within the country, outside the country. The takers for CMEs which are online and all have been very less, right? And most of the doctors believe to be personally present while listening to the conversation and the presentations. Given COVID situation, given the new learnings which are there, what is your estimate as far as the future is concerned? And the second part of the question is, where do you see the role of pharma in this changing dynamic as far as the relationships are concerned? You will have to unmute, sir. Dr. Hiremat, you will have to unmute. Dr. Hiremat, you will have to unmute.
No doubt that pharma has been the backbone of this kind of updating of doctors. They have been the via media between the teachers and the participants. And all the conferences, smaller or bigger conferences, we know that they were all supported by pharma. So what I see is that the way these webinars are happening and the ease at which large number can be engaged, there are obvious advantages of the webinar, that they time bound, they start in time, end in time, and there is no money spent on food and alcohol and travel and other things. So it is remarkably convenient, and I'm sure all of us now got used to it. And I would prefer doing a webinar from home rather than traveling after my practice somewhere else and have food there and come back late at night. So it's a very good idea to have a webinar. The other biggest advantage of a webinar is that people who are interested attend. So it's not that they are brought there and then they are not. So you get people who are focused and who are interested in their academics. So that is going to stay. I don't think the large annual conferences will go virtual. like what ACC happened this time or many other conferences, because the large annual conferences are not just conferences, they are a social forum to meet everybody. Like I've been attending the CSI like a pilgrim for last almost 25 years. So sometimes take family, sometimes go meet old people, contacting. All these makes a lot of difference. And even people, doctors practicing in smaller areas get to come to the metros, get to meet their seniors. So that is a something annual conferences probably continue to be actually good. But a lot of smaller conferences will get changed to webinars, and that's how it should be. And the pharma should bring in a lot of innovations also in that. Whatever we are seeing, probably a primitive form of webinar, like what it was about 2 months ago and what it is now is already very different. It is slicker, it is easy to communicate, audio visuals are very good. So it's going to improve a lot. Finally, if you take the level of evidence, 1A is mathematics, in which there is 2 plus 2 is still 4. And if level of evidence, the worst evidence at 2D, that is philosophy, God, rebirth, karma, that is all level 2D. And medicine that we practice is 2B. That means here level of evidence keeps changing. What we said 5 years ago may not hold true now. So updating amongst the medical profession has to be there. You take up any other profession, there is no such updating, whether it is lawyers or chartered accountants. But here, doctors have to keep on doing it because it's a fluid evidence that we are, biology is 2B, and that's why it is important. So there can be innovations in that, as I said. The other place where pharma can get involved is actually in telemedicine. Like they have to do it as a third party, because done by a pharma may raise some eyebrows. So the third party telemedicine. And what I find is very important in Indian scenario, a doctor at the other end. There are a lot of smaller homeopaths, Ayurvedic doctors who are practicing in smaller areas. If they sit with the patient on the other end, then it will make telecommunication or teleconsultation remarkably simple. Because the doctor at other end can give you blood pressure, can give you thing, can read the reports correctly to you, can take down your prescription. So if somebody can ensure that, and it is so very possible, because there is plethora of smaller doctors all across the country, and taking them into account and the senior doctor in the cities probably is going to make a lot of difference. According to me, that's the way to go as far as telemedicine is concerned. I have always had this doubt as to why it's impossible to make a new discovery or a new invention of a drug and do a randomized control trial and spend millions of dollars. That is not priority of India. Probably in the years to come, it might happen. But why not do research on some India-centric drugs? If somebody says that homeopathic arsenal album is going to be useful in COVID, why not research that? We are all allopaths, but finally what works is medicine. So if India can give something to the world, why the pharma not interested in doing research on that? They could be very short trials and they could be very effective. Then the thinking of innovation, the last part of my deliberation now is, in this webinar, there could be voting participation options, so that it will improve the attendance, it will improve the participation of the voters. There could be questions and multiple choice. It need not be India centric. It would be international webinars, could be held very easily, or you could have international speakers coming into our webinars very routinely because of the ease of the communication, ease of administrating the whole thing. Inside hospital CMEs are so difficult to hold nowadays. But because of this, you can easily hold a short 20-minute inside hospital webinar where everybody can be there in own place and yet can attend the short teaching that goes on. And one last part is wherein why not try to collect statistical data for India, even simple statistics like how many are hypertensives in India, how many are diabetics in India. All such simple, it will be grand statistic because it will involve lakhs of participants. It's very easy to do it electronically nowadays. So if that kind of a innovative statistical data accumulation starts, it will be a big step forward. So this is how I see role of pharma, and also what is going to be the patient physician communication in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Hiramat. That was very interesting. I think what I heard was large conferences will be still important. Small conferences can be converted into webinars. Webinars need to be interactive. They cannot be, from one person to another. It can be international. They can be within the hospitals. I also heard that medicine, and there was an interesting point which you brought in, where on the other side, at the patient side, if you have got a doctor who is from maybe Ayurvedic background or other backgrounds,
Take
so
any
other background. So I think the quality of the diagnosis and the interaction between the patient and the senior doctor would improve significantly. Thank you very much, Dr. Hiramat. Moving on to Dr. Unnikrishnan, sir, there is a large part of this relationship when it comes to in clinic representatives visiting the doctors, 25 representatives waiting there, giving literatures, interacting with the customer, etc., etc. Now, in the context of this social distancing, short term, long term, how do you see this going on in future? And again, like I asked Dr. Hiramat, where do you see the role of pharmaceuticals as we go forward in this changing and dynamic scenario?
I think as far as the pharma interaction, the pharma representative interaction with the doctor is concerned, I think technology is likely to play a big role. The reason is because as many of the pharma companies are asking their employees to stay at home and work from home, and many of them may be worried about visiting the hospital. Sometimes doctors may be worried about the pharma representative visiting the hospital, because doctor may be thinking that will may not be aware from which part of the city they are from, etc. Natural fears will not happen to established doctors, because they are already seeing patients and they are quite cool about it. But I think uh, what the pharma industry has to do is to plan very diligently and strategically to reach out to doctors in a very strategic manner. I mean, artificial intelligence is already there. I mean, you can understand the doctors. Each doctor has a unique behavior. Each doctor has a unique knowledge level, and each of the pharma representatives now have to be trained to actually address the doctor for that doctor's particular interests as well as needs. For example, a doctor sitting in a small town may be looking at, okay, what's the new drug and what's the dose and how do I prescribe it, and who all are using it, how is it being used, can I know the dose, can I know the strength, can I know the size. So the pharma representative doctor relationship will never go away, because that's a relationship of knowledge which ultimately helps the patient. But that for a doctor practicing in a small town may have to be different from a doctor, for example, a specialist who's a renowned specialist in his field. The pharma representative will have to approach that person digitally with something else, something different, share some recent studies with them. So apply artificial intelligence and use. And the second point is the time. The time is very important. Uh, the time should be chosen in such a way that it is exactly fitting into that doctor's free time. For example, if the doctor is busy in the clinic, because in a real world setting, the pharma representative will be outside my room waiting for me to see it, and that gentleman or lady will be waiting patiently for me to finish my patient and come in. But in a digital setup, that may not be possible. So you'll have to strategically find out what is the doctor's free time. Is that the time to contact him or her? So that sort of planning has to be done. The third thing is the quality of the interaction. So as Dr. Hiramat was mentioning, the digital, if the interaction is going to be digital, of course, I believe that still there is a role for physical face-to-face interaction, which is very important. But if there is a digital interaction, that interaction uh, has to stand out distinctively in many ways. For example, it could be an interactive question. It could present a study in a different way. It could present, for example, if somebody is treating, if it's a physician, not a cardiologist, but a physician who treats medical, statins and aspirins and preventive cardiology. As a physician, then you could have a virtual clinic-based setting where the physician is trained to understand, explore different treatments, and look at benefits. So different ways of making the experience very novel yet technologically savvy. I foresee three events happening with the rise in technology. One is that you might see doctors in smaller cities reaching out to patients well beyond their borders of their district or state because of the teleconsultation, good communicators. I also foresee the rise of online pharmacies, and I also foresee the use of online technology. Uh, as far as using particular software is concerned, I think doctors will choose the software which is most suitable for them. So the role of the industry is actually to help the doctor help the patient. So you will have to, instead of going for a particular software or a particular tool, you'll have to actually help that doctor. How can he reach out to his patients and how can he take care? So very tailored, personalized approach, uh, digitally as well as personally needed.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Unikrishna. I think very, very important insights. One is technology is going to come in for sure. The role of pharma is to ensure that they understand the customer better, because each customer is different, his requirements are different. Third one is in technology, how do you ensure that the quality of interaction and the care which the doctor is giving to the patient, it improves. I think that's a very, very insightful discussion which we had. Moving on to Mr. Jain. Jain sir, you have seen industry in the last 40, 35 years, and you have seen different types of marketing. Now, at this current stage, what would be your advice to the pharma professionals? And as far as the relationship between physicians and pharma is concerned, you will have to unmute, sir.
Thank you very much, Abhay. And I will start with the question with the last part of Dr. Unikrishnan and also many of the points that Dr. Hiramat raised. He raised the basic question, and the basic question for pharma industry is, how do industry help the doctor to help his patient? And that is the fundamental question which is there over the years. We help the doctor to help his patient through product and the information, whatever we think based on the research, what we have done. And that question has been there for last 35 years, but the technology has changed. And the answer to that question will change fundamentally with COVID coming in. I keep on quoting the only two things which have increased in last 2 months is Zoom interaction and the COVID spread of the disease. I'll just give some figure and then build on it. Zoom market capitalization 2 months back was $15 billion. It has gone to $41 billion last week. And the number of Zoom interaction, which were there, say around 3 months, were around 20 million. Now it is 200 million interactions all over the world. So that has spread. So what will happen going forward is the technology will become more enabler. There is no substitute for human contact, but there will be technology which will come into the picture. And two roles, I will build on both Dr. Hiramat and Dr. Unikrishnan was saying. There's a concept of patient funnel. And patients are at different stages, and the doctors are there to help the patient at different stages. So we have to understand the patient better, and we have to understand the doctor better. Patient is, when we are saying the issue is of awareness, diagnosis, treatment, and compliance. And Dr. Unikrishnan has been part of building thyroid therapy in India. And I will recall some of the interaction which I had with him around 20 years back, both in Kerala and at Pune. There were issues of 100 when we launched Thyronorm in this country. There was only 100 microgram. And it was thought that one solution fits all for every patient. And through the discussion with Dr. Unikrishnan and many of the doctors, we came out with different dosages, different forms, different things. So there cannot be carpet bombing. There cannot be one solution for all the doctors. There cannot be one solution for all the patients. We have to understand the patient, and as Doctor was saying, whether we should focus on awareness, whether we should focus on diagnosis, whether we should focus on treatment, or whether we should focus on compliance, based on the patient and based on the doctor. And then there has to be omni-channel solution where we tend to provide everything to a doctor. So that's the way the therapy will move. That's the way the solution will move. It will be more targeted, it will be more focused, it will be less of carpet bombing, and it will be relevant to the doctors at his time where we have to give the information. We will have better understanding of the doctor, and we will have more targeted communication. Over to you, Abhay.
Thank you, Jain Sahab. I think what I understand is that data is going to be significantly different as compared to what it was. It will have to be very focused and targeted on the basis of where the patient is and what type of doctor is. So technology will be there, but the human touch will continue to be a very important part of the interactions. Thank you, Mr. Jain. That was very insightful. And then my last question to Dr. Sanjay Mitra. Sanjay, what is your view about the change which is going to take place in the pharma and the physician's relationship, the doctor and the pharma relationship as we get into the future?
Yeah, interesting point. I mean, when during the first phase of lockdown, when I was interacting with pharma industry, and then now when I'm interacting with pharma industry almost on a daily basis, I find the mindsets are also changing there. Initially, there was a fear, there was an apprehension that post-COVID or during COVID, as it has happened, that will continue. No medical representative will be allowed to meet the doctors, right? So how do we communicate with the doctor and all that? Now, of course, the intensity of this fear has reduced, but it is still existing and different forms. Thinking that when this will change, whether after 2 months, after 3 months, after 6 months, like that. Now, my personal feel is looking at the industry's behavior and looking at the doctors coming back to the clinic and starting operations. Initially, everything will remain restricted way. It will not open up suddenly. But definitely things, as it moves way forward, things will become normal and more normal over a period of time. So what would be the initial period or even during COVID period? As we have seen, most of my clients' internal performance as well as our prescription data, what we have observed, as long as the focus or the core doctor groups are concerned, for the focus brand, the response was relatively much better in terms of performance than the tail brands or the less frequently prescribing doctors or the non-core doctors, meaning say 70% to 60% of the doctor groups, which are not particularly core doctors for a particular setup company or particular division or a therapy area. There the loss was more, whereas the core doctors, this Pareto's law, 30%, top 30% doctors were prescribing more, or at least the awareness level or the continuity of business continued. I think this trend is maintained and this trend will continue. So instead of doing more, industry will do less. Industry will definitely get consolidated for the better. So earlier, if the pharma company used to think that having more reach will give me more business tomorrow, definitely that will not be the mantra. The mantra would be, how can I increase depth to have better productivity? So how can I make every call more productive? How can I get the best information to the right doctor segment? So their technology will definitely be a big facilitator, big tool, big help. Because through this online, patient management system, of course, every company can have a very specific communication set prepared for a selected group of doctors, and also have a daily Q&A. If you see, initial stage of lockdown, I used to receive WhatsApp messages that a BU head of a company is proclaiming with a lot of pride that today I had a webinar and there were 200 doctors who attended. So I used to smile because that was not a webinar, that was a mela like medical conferences. But over a period of time, the size of the webinar reduced and it became more productive, became more interactive. So having 10 doctors in the webinar on a particular topic and making all of them participate is a much more beneficial from all aspects, from patient care aspect or from knowledge aspect, knowledge sharing aspect, than having a huge number as a participant and delivering nothing, right? So essentially, what Sudarshan said, the focus, as we have been always preaching, in every single recommendation that SMSRC has made to every single client was based on how that particular company can bring in greater focus and deliver better quality. This trend will definitely increase. So it's always a blessing in disguise, and these are some of the blessings of COVID. Over to you, Abhay.
Right. Thank you, Sanjay. I think what I understand is that marketing focus will have to increase, understanding the customer and then delivering the message to him will be much more important. Big brands will be built bigger. And I think the strategy and customer understanding will become the primary important area for every pharma industry.
Perfect. Yeah.
Good. I think we have come to the end of round two. I have personally learned a lot from the questions which we have asked and answers which we have got, which I'll summarize in the end. We have another maybe 10 minutes to go. My colleague Srihari will come in now. We have got many questions. I think some of the questions will be able to handle right now, given the time constraint, and then maybe a couple of minutes at the end for me to conclude. Over to Srihari.
Yeah, thanks, Abhay. And it was a really wonderful discussion so far. I see a number of questions on the Q&A side as well as on the chat side. So while it is not probably going to be possible to address all of them, but I see definitely some of the common themes emerging, and maybe I thought that I will pick up a few common themes that are emerging, and then probably pose those questions to the panel members. So I think one question which is coming is very clearly about patient and the caregiver, and how during this teleconsultation process, how their roles will continue to remain important, and how maybe doctors or the medical practitioners can also take into account a caregiver as one important element when they are doing teleconsultation. So now, as compared to physical consultation, whether teleconsultation will be very different, and since the physical contact is lost, can caregiver be of a significant benefit as compared to what it has been? So any comments from Dr. Hiremath and Dr. Unikrishnan on that? How caregiver is? Yeah, Dr. Hiremath, can you unmute yourself, Doctor?
I touched upon it when I was talking about the second part, that a caregiver or a doctor of any stature, maybe a medical student in the house or somebody who can understand the medical language, is great. But if not, I think rather than the patient himself, the caregiver, even a nurse, is also good enough for making that difference. Why these consultations not audio? Because there is no eye-to-eye contact. Video conferencing makes the whole difference. That takes away a lot of anxiety of the patient. Patient sees the doctor. There is a direct eye-to-eye contact and talk. So that part is taken care of by teleconsultations. So apart from that, giving some medical information from the other side relevant, and whatever the doctor is giving out as an advice, understanding on the other end. For that, it is very crucial to have a caregiver or an intelligent person of the house, or best is to have a junior doctor on the other side.
Yeah, okay, right. Other question which I see a lot of questions around are on telemedicine, because that's, I think, new emerging field for all the participants. And maybe Sanjay, maybe I'll direct that question to you. I think you are also doing some work about understanding from the doctors about what are they looking for in terms of the telemedicine. What are their expectations? So any insights, early insights. I know your work is still on, but any early insights if you can share, I think that might be benefit, because there is a lot of interest in number of questions I see on telemedicine.
Yeah, sure. See, there was a confusion as far as what is telemedicine, what is patient management system, and what are the deliverables. Actually, with all due respect to all the medical fraternities, the users were not ready exactly what they need, right? Now, so it was more the task of the service provider to find out exactly what will serve the purpose. So we have done a lot of research with a lot of doctors to check what are the specific requirements without asking them what kind of online software you are actually looking for. Looking at that, what I see, we need more of a patient management system rather than just a telemedicine. Telemedicine was an ad hoc solution provider during this COVID disconnected period. Post-COVID, of course, telemedicine is not going to play a major role. Instead, patient management system will definitely going to remain, and that will help the doctors to facilitate their practice and provide better care for their patient. Now, what's the difference between telemedicine and patient management system? Telemedicine essentially a connect between the doctor and the patient over video chat or over phone call to know what the patient is suffering from, and then offer some solutions to that through prescriptions, WhatsApp, or a photo scan of the prescription pad. But patient management system, it's much more broader and more useful, because it doesn't only cover that small part of telemedicine, but it also records the day-to-day patient records in the system. And for the doctor, it becomes a unique independent information management system. So at a point of time, a doctor can definitely see the journey of a patient. May not be possible today, but over a period of time. And that is, one can actually publish that record, all those records of his own findings in a group, in any journals or articles, or even communicate with the patient that post my treatment or my taking care of your ailment, what is the progression? Say to Dr. Unni Krishnan, I'm sure while looking at a diabetic patient, if when he comes with a sugar level of 500 or 300, and then over a period of time I show him that HbA1c is less than equal to 7, I have been able to control you without giving you insulin, I think the smile on the patient face will be many times more than otherwise. Now, he must be doing that, achieving those goals quite often, but we do not have his independent records to prove it to the patient. Now, when one-on-one basis, a doctor is able to show him a history of his journey, last few years, that will be wonderful. That's what my personal feelings are when we look at different patient management system, including that of ours. So essentially, every, again, I would be trying to be more optimistic and say every result that human race has faced so far, we have found out something better and something new. So this challenge, the whole world will definitely come out better, and we will definitely deliver something wonderful within a very short period of time. Thanks to the habit changing element that COVID has injected in the mind of all prescribers who were reluctant, allergic to use online medicines or online tools. Now that allergy part COVID has worked as an anti-allergic component. So at least doctors are used to accept these softwares, and then they will get more used to when they see the benefits. So for each segment of doctors, we will require to fine-tune the tool to suit their requirement. Like I said, specialization. Like I said always to our clients, that when I go to cardiologist, I have to sing one song and not the same song when I go to the diabetologist. Similarly, the software has to also play different specialized role to cater to the requirement of each segment. It's an era of segmentation, it's an era of focus, and this era was there earlier. With little less realization, that realization will increase and will become more and more focused and upgraded and updated. Over to you, Siri.
Thank you, Sanjay. I think that was quite insightful, because that's a question which is there in everyone's mind. I think one question for you, Mr. Jain, is what everyone is talking about. That how the interactions between the pharma industry and the doctors are undergoing a fundamental change, and you talked about it. Even other panelists, they talked about it. So I think that brings us back to the actually more important question of permission marketing, if I use the word. Because I think someone also mentioned that, we used to have, I think Sanjay mentioned 250 doctors on the webinar to begin with. So it was just the numbers. I think Dr. Hiramat also talked about it, that someone who's really keen and interested will join that webinar or that meeting kind of thing. So in a way, is going back to the permission marketing actually. So from a marketer's perspective, what he or she has to change when he or she has to become a more effective permission marketing person, rather than being a push person, all along kind of thing. So I think that's one area which is going to become very important and relevant. You have to unmute yourself, Mr.
Thank you very much, Sherry. A very, very fundamental question for all of us. is we have been used to a concept where we go to a doctor and we talk with a visual aid, all the products, and from one page to the last page. We have got programs where we have mass gathering. We have one doctor's meeting where same thing is being talked again and again. Gone are the days of that. And the companies which will prosper are those companies which can target the patient and the doctor well. And that was the point which Dr. Hiramat talked about and Dr. Unikrishnan talked about, that we have to have a small group of doctors and use omni-channel marketing, where, like, say, what time to meet a doctor, what kind of message I should give to a doctor, which product should I focus? Should I focus on those, or should I focus on awareness and diagnosis? Because the whole world, and today with a lot of work which we are doing in our portfolio companies, is also to understand the doctor. What I talked to doctor last time, what are the reports which he asked for? How do I target the message? How do I target the communication? When I should meet the doctors? Those things will become much more important. And hence, we have to train our product marketeers in that particular way, and also the field force in a particular way, that there should not be intrusion. Like we have been seeing the number of WhatsApp messages which Dr. Hiramat and Dr. Unikrishnan must be receiving today. They are seeing the patient, but there are messages and messages. There are webinars and webinars. Everyone is being sent everything else. So that is a tremendous intrusion in the doctor space. What we need to do, get the focus, get the segmentation, get the targeting, and get the salience on those areas which are very, very important. So segmentation, targeting, positioning, and salience is fundamental, which will get prominence as far as pharma interaction and pharma promotions are concerned.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Jain. Abhay, my last question for Dr. Unikrishnan. Again, I'm going through the various sort of questions that are coming through. In the space of, I think, chronic care management, and there are some specifications, questions of diabetes management also. I think largely I will call as a chronic care management. Industry and has been supporting the medical profession in managing those chronic patients. Dr. Unikrishnan, do you see any different ways or any innovations in this space? Because this is something, question why I'm asking is that it has got immediate implications in some of the ways the pharma industry can probably start supporting the medical profession and continue the education of the patient, which is very important part in chronic care. Is there any other way you think that pharma industry can contribute to that meaningfully? Any thoughts, any ideas on that which people can actually take back home? So up to you, Dr. Unikrishnan, if you can throw some light.
Couple of quick thoughts. One is, like Dr. Sanjoy was mentioning, that there is a need for a patient management system, but there are a few challenges in that system. That the system has to have some common ground where the data entered is similar. At the same time, it is specialized to suit each doctor. The second is, in what way can pharma get involved in that system, and in what way will pharma compete for that system? And the third thing is that how are you going to train every doctor to use that system? So, but a patient management system will help. The second way in which pharma can help the doctor is by helping in patient education. So helping the doctor to help patient awareness. For example, if a doctor is writing a particular therapy, how can the doctor's time be saved by giving that advice or awareness directly to the patient, or the doctor can directly give that direction, that advice in a targeted way to the patient. So this is already being done in a small way, but it requires much more innovation, because that's the way I think the things will move. The third area and the final area is that I think the pharma industry is always thought big about the disease, about building a knowledge pathway. So I think it's important also. Pharma industry cannot directly market products to patients. That's not done. But awareness about a disease to the patient will definitely help the patient come to the doctor. So I think good social messages through various media to the patients about disease awareness will definitely improve patients' awareness, because many people don't know about, even today, they don't know about diabetes, its management, coronary artery disease, its treatments, and there are a lot of misconceptions. So I think without any commercial interest, the pharma can come together, build a knowledge pathway. I think that will definitely improve, help the doctors to help the patients.
Thank you, Dr. Unnikrishnan. Over to you, Abhay. Can we have the closing remarks now? Because I think we are just having another 3-4 minutes. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much to my panelists and to all the participants. I'll quickly summarize. What I have learned in this one is that when it comes to the relationship between the physician and patient is concerned, a lot is going to change and maybe permanently. The touching may not be there, but the touch is going to be there. The second T which is going to come in is technology, which is going to play a significant role. There is going to be an increase. There is going to be a reduction in the number of patients which a doctor is going to see. The cost is going to increase. There is a likelihood of government stepping in to ensure that the costs are properly in place. The rooms of the doctors and the way they meet the patient is is likely to go change. Many opportunities for pharma. The staff needs to be trained, right? We also learned that there are we also learned from Sanjay, very important thing is that rural is by and large unaffected. 80% rural is still there. So urban is changing. Maybe the technology will penetrate urban first. Rural may remain there, and rural also contributes to a significant amount of business for many of us. Some of the things which we learned in the second part is when it comes to pharma and pharma contribution is that can we contribute in ensuring that a patient is brought back to the doctor with confidence? Can we contribute, in many areas like staff training? Can we contribute in technology by which the patient data can be there? Can we contribute by ensuring that technology is understood by the staff of the doctors, the doctor understands it properly? The patient management bit, which Dr. Unnikrishnan spoke in the end, is also very significant in many disease areas. Patient management, I'm not talking about patient education, because patient education, pharma industry has been talking for a long time, but patient management becomes a significant area as an opportunity area for us. Mr. Jain spoke about permission marketing. I think that's a very important word which we can take home. Well, I think the whole thing is going to move towards permission marketing. There can be technology around it. And what it means in essence is that we need to understand the customer, we need to understand the patient, and maybe target our efforts around this. So one size fits all and start the visual aid with the first page and end it with the last page is something which may not be very effective as we get into the future, right? I'm sure that all the participants must have gained significantly. They must have made their own notes. And I would like to thank everybody, all my panelists, as well as all the participants for joining in. Shrihari, thank you very much for being a partner in this. And thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It has been
thank you, Mr. Shrihari. Thank you, Mr. Lonkar. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay.
Thank you.
And of course, Mr. Jain. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. It was great to be with you all.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.